Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. I'd love it if you could leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from around the world. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this video. Story 1. We were three friends, me, Mike, and Darren. Met in college, bonded over horror movies and late-night gaming, then scattered to different cities after graduation. Life happened. Careers, marriages, kids. But last fall, we decided to reconnect. Just us. No phones, no wives, no obligations. Mike found a cabin deep in the woods of British Columbia, miles from any town. Remote, peaceful, and supposedly off-grid. The drive up was full of laughter, old stories, and the kind of joking only friends with history can get away with. It took 6 hours to reach the cabin, and by the time we unloaded our gear, it was already getting dark. The place was rustic, but charming. Wooden walls, creaky floors, a stone fireplace. The air smelled like pine and distant rain. That first night, we drank whiskey by the fire, shared stories, and joked about how this was exactly the kind of place where people vanish in horror movies. Mike even pulled out his phone to record a fake ghost hunting video, until we reminded him there was no signal, no Wi-Fi, no bars, just trees and silence. The next night, after dinner, Darren stepped outside to smoke. He didn't say much, just grabbed his coat and mumbled, "Be right back." We heard the cabin door click shut, and then nothing. 10 minutes passed, then 20, then 30. Mike and I exchanged a look. At first, we figured he wandered off to take a call or clear his head. Darren could be moody like that. But after 40 minutes, we started to worry. We grabbed flashlights and split up. He headed toward the trail. I walked around back near the woodshed. The trees loomed like silent sentries, swaying gently, as if breathing. I called Darren's name. No answer. That's when I heard the footsteps. Fast, crunching leaves behind me. Found him. I shouted toward the cabin, my voice echoing too loudly. I turned, expecting Darren's usual lazy smirk. What I saw wasn't Darren. It looked like him, sure, same height, same leather jacket. But his smile was wrong. Too wide, like someone had cut into his face with a dull knife. And his eyes, they didn't blink. Not once. "Darren," I asked, flashlight trembling in my hand. He nodded slowly. That was it. Just a slow, robotic nod. I backed up and told him to come inside. He followed, footsteps too light, like he wasn't heavy enough to make noise. Mike was waiting at the cabin door. I saw his expression change as soon as Darren stepped into the light. He went pale. Inside, we tried to act normal. Made coffee. Laughed nervously. But Darren didn't say a word. He sat on the couch, eyes locked on the fire, body stiff like a mannequin. The only sound in the room was the pop and hiss of the burning logs. Mike leaned over and whispered, "Darren has green eyes." "What?" I asked. He pointed, subtle. "Look, his eyes. They're brown." I looked closer. Mike was right. Darren, or whatever this was, had deep brown eyes. Our Darren had green eyes. Bright, almost hazel in the sun. I was about to say something when the thing on the couch turned its head slowly, unnaturally slowly, and looked at us. Then it spoke, in my voice. Green eyes. Brown now. I froze. Mike stood up so fast he knocked over his mug. Coffee spilled, steaming across the wooden floor. We backed toward the door. The thing stood, mimicking every move with perfect timing. Still smiling. Still not blinking. Darren. I tried again, though I knew whatever that was, it wasn't him. It tilted its head like a confused dog. Then it began to hum. A slow, off-key version of a song we used to play in college. I didn't even know Darren remembered it. We didn't wait. Mike and I bolted for his car, still half-dressed. The thing didn't follow, but we felt it stare on our backs all the way down the drive. The drive back to town was dead silent. Neither of us spoke. We didn't know what to say. We called the local police the next morning. They searched the area, found the cabin exactly as we'd left it, except the fire was out and the couch was empty. No Darren. No footprints. No signs of a struggle. Nothing. It's been 8 months since that weekend. Darren's never been found. His family filed a missing persons report, but there were no leads. No one's heard from him. Not a trace. His phone was still on a cabin table. Mike won't talk about it anymore. Says he's blocked the number he saw me call from that night. But I didn't call him. I swear I didn't. Sometimes I wake up in a cold sweat, my voice echoing in my head. That same line. Green eyes. Brown now. I've seen it too. Twice now. Once in the mirror. Once standing outside my window. It was wearing my face. Smiling that same wide, horrible grin. And it didn't blink. Story 2. After my relationship fell apart, like a sandcastle under a boot, I needed out. Out of the city, out of the noise, out of the pain. So I booked a solo retreat to Montana. Found this cozy little cabin on Airbnb. Cheap, woodsy, and alone. No neighbors. No traffic. Just trees, snow, and silence. Perfect. The listing said peaceful escape for riders and loners. That felt right. I imagined I'd spend my days walking trails, drinking coffee by the fireplace, maybe journaling my way out of heartbreak. Something about that silence felt like medicine. The cabin looked like it belonged on a postcard. Log walls, stone chimney, wide windows with snowy views. Inside, it smelled like pine and old books. There were blankets folded neatly, a jar of cocoa on the counter, and a little guest book with happy messages from past renters. The first 2 nights were exactly what I needed. No calls, no texts, just me and the crackling fire. I even started writing again. But the third night, something shifted. It was 3:12 a.m. when I first heard it. A dragging sound above the ceiling, soft but deliberate. Not wind, not branches. This was different. Like someone pulling something heavy across the attic floor. I sat up in bed, ears straining. The sound stopped. I laughed it off. Mice. Maybe a raccoon. Old cabin. Old noises. The next night, same time. 3:12, dragging. Then a creaking sound, slow and rhythmic, like footsteps pacing. A few steps, then pause. A few more, then stop. Again, it ended just as I got up. I climbed onto the bed and tapped the ceiling. Solid. No vibration. Nothing unusual. But the next morning, I noticed something that turned my stomach. The ceiling light fixture had shifted slightly. I swear it wasn't like that before. Night 5, I stayed up late, flashlight and kitchen knife beside me. Not because I believe anything crazy, but because my gut told me something was wrong. 3:12 a.m. On the dock. Dragging. Then creaking. This time, I didn't hesitate. I grabbed the flashlight and knife and walked down the hallway to the attic hatch. It was one of those pull-down ladders, like you'd find in an old farmhouse. Dust floated down as I tugged the cord, and the ladder creaked open. The air was cold and still. I climbed slowly, one rung at a time, heart thudding like a drum in my chest. My flashlight beam danced across cobwebs and rafters, catching the dust in floating halos. The attic was small, cramped, boxes piled in the corners, a broken rocking horse, some yellowed newspapers, and in the far corner, something I hadn't expected to see. A mattress, filthy, stained, sagging like it had been used for years. Beside it, a dirty blanket, and something else, a crumpled paper bag with candy wrappers and an empty water bottle inside. And next to the mattress, a Polaroid photo. It was a picture of me, sleeping. I stopped breathing. My mouth went dry. I stared at the photo like it would vanish if I blinked. But it didn't. It was me, under the quilt, in that cabin, taken from a slightly elevated angle, like from the attic hatch looking down. I backed away, knees shaking, and nearly fell off the ladder. I stumbled to my phone and called the sheriff. I didn't care if it made me look crazy. I just wanted someone else to see it. The deputy came in less than an hour with another officer. They searched the attic and found what I'd seen. Then they checked the crawl space. And behind the walls, that's when they found it. A narrow vent tunnel that ran from the attic, down through the walls, all the way to the bathroom and bedroom. Hidden access points, cleverly cut to be nearly invisible. Whoever had been up there had been living in the cabin, watching me, moving around while I slept, using the crawl space to enter and exit rooms without leaving footprints. They found dirty fingernail marks on the inside of one of the vent covers. Someone had been peering through it. For how long? No one knew. The worst part, the Airbnb host, a woman in her 50s named Carol, insisted no one had stayed in that attic. She swore it was sealed off and hadn't been used in years. She even sent photos from before I checked in. The attic hatch was padlocked in those pictures. The lock was gone when I arrived. The sheriff couldn't explain it. No signs of forced entry. No fingerprints. Whoever lived there was careful. I left the cabin that night, drove to a motel, and didn't sleep a second. I kept thinking about that Polaroid. How close someone had been. How quiet they had to be. How they moved while I dreamed. Sometimes when I close my eyes, I see them. Not a face. Not even a body. Just the outline. A shadow with eyes that never blink. I imagine them lying on that mattress, watching, waiting, breathing softly in the dark while I snore just feet below. They lived in the attic the whole time, and I never heard them breathe. Story 3. It was supposed to be a break. A clean, disconnected, no screens kind of break. My wife, Caroline, had insisted we needed it. The kids, Ellie, who was 6, and Jake, who was 9, had their eyes glued to tablets half the time, and I couldn't stop checking emails from work. So we rented this old wooden cabin in rural Vermont, tucked deep into a thicket of pines where the GPS signal gave up 2 turns before we reached the gravel driveway. The air smelled clean, earthy, like moss and history, like secrets. The cabin looked exactly how you'd picture it. Weathered timber, red shutters, a porch swing creaking in the breeze. But behind it, buried into the slope of a hill and half covered in dead ivy, was a root cellar. It was sealed shut with 3 thick chains and a rusted padlock that looked 100 years old. The door itself was warped sun-bleached, and rimmed in black mildew. It smelled faintly like rotting wood and cold dirt. The kids found it within the first 10 minutes of exploring. Ellie said it looked like a tiny haunted house for bugs. Jake threw a pine cone at it and pretended to cast a spell. We laughed, told him it was off limits. Dangerous, probably full of mold and spiders. The first night was quiet. Still, we made hot cocoa and lit a fire in the old stone fireplace. The place had no TV, no Wi-Fi, not even a radio. It was just us, the trees, and the silence. The whispers started the second night. At first, I thought it was wind under the floorboards. That's what I told myself, anyway. You know how old cabins creak and groan like they're stretching their bones? It was like that, but lower, softer, whispering. It wasn't a language I recognized, more like murmured breath between cracks in the wood. Caroline thought I was joking when I mentioned it, but then she heard it too. Around 2 a.m., we both woke up at the same time like we'd been called. There was this gentle sound, almost like a chant beneath the floor, like someone repeating a prayer that had no beginning or end. It came and went in waves. I tiptoed across the bedroom floor, put my ear to the vent near the wall. The sound was clearer there. Not English. Not anything I could place. The next morning, I checked the cellar door. The chains were still tight, padlocks still closed. But something was different. There were scratches on the door, long, thin ones, as if made by fingernails. Or claws. Fresh, not weathered. I told myself maybe it was an animal. A raccoon, maybe, or a bear, though I'd never seen claw marks like those before. They were too deliberate, too desperate. By the fourth night, the whispering was louder and rhythmic, chant-like. Even Jake stopped acting brave. He told us he'd heard footsteps under the floor while brushing his teeth. Said it sounded like someone pacing slowly back and forth beneath the hallway. I checked again. Same door, same chains, but more scratches now. Dozens of them. Some were bleeding through the wood, splinters curling outward like peeled skin. That's when Ellie came into our room. She stood at the foot of our bed, her stuffed rabbit hanging by one ear, her voice flat and distant. Her eyes were wide, unfocused. She said, "The people in the ground want to come inside now." My wife sat up so fast the blankets flew off the bed. I remember the way Caroline looked at me in that moment. Not scared, exactly, but on the edge of something sharp, something primal. "What did you say, sweetie?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. Ellie didn't blink. "They said they've waited long enough. They want to be warm." Then she turned and walked back to her room like nothing had happened. That was it for me. I barely waited until morning. I went out with bolt cutters, ready to get a good look inside that cellar. I didn't want my family in that house another night without knowing what the hell was under us. I snapped the chains, yanked the padlock loose, and pulled open the cellar doors. The smell hit first, wet soil, rot, and something metallic. The stairs were stone, crumbling and uneven. I only went a few feet down with a flashlight, but that was enough. The walls weren't just dirt. They were covered in carvings, symbols, circles, spirals. Some were painted in what looked like old, dry blood. And near the back wall, I saw something. Shapes, bones maybe, arranged in a ring. I backed out, slammed the door, rechained as best I could. I didn't tell Caroline what I saw. I didn't want the kids to hear, but I couldn't stop shaking. That night, the banging started. Not whispers, not footsteps. Banging. 3 hard knocks from under the floor. Then a pause. Then 3 more. Like a code. Like something was asking to come in. Over and over. Until the sky began to lighten with dawn. We didn't wait. We packed in 15 minutes. Left dishes in the sink and clothes in the drawers. I didn't even care about the deposit. We drove straight to a motel with bright lights and people and cell service. We didn't talk for a long time. Not until Caroline said she'd dreamed of hands reaching up from the floor, clawing at the wood, trying to pull her under. Weeks later, I couldn't resist the urge to search the place online. I didn't expect to find anything, but I did. A post on a niche forum about cursed places of New England. There was a blurry photo of the same cabin, the same cellar. The post said that in the 1800s, a small cult had lived on that land. They believed in something ancient beneath the soil, some god or force that promised them eternal warmth if they buried themselves alive and whispered its name. The townspeople found out, sealed them in the root cellar, let them die down there. The door had been locked ever since. The whispers, the post said, still come when it's cold. And here's the part that keeps me up most nights. I still hear them sometimes. In dreams. In the silence between thoughts. A soft whisper, looping words I still don't understand. But Ellie does. Last week, she whispered in her sleep, "They still want to come inside." Then she smiled and didn't open her eyes.